A blessed day to one and all. We praise God because of this opportunity to come together and experience the first regional planning conference of DepEd Cagayan Valley region. To our regional director, Sir Benjamin Paragas, our assistant regional director, Sir Jess Amin, to all our chiefs and officials of DepEd Regional Office 2, everyone in the different schools division offices from the CID, OSDS, and the SGOD. Of course, to our districts, our schools, our community learning centers, to all our principals, teachers, and most especially the stars of the K-12 program, no less than our learners. So a blessed day and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this experience, and allow me to thank Sir Francis Deo Ventura for the invitation. And please allow me to share my presentation, and I entitled it as this one, raising quality by improving equity through the BBQ leadership. This time, it's BBQ Leadership 4.0. Of course, the BBQ Leadership started as a research initiative at the SDO Quirino with Sir Orly Manuel as our SDS. Okay, so this is my presentation outline. I have 6 bullets here. We'll start with a discussion on equity, okay? And this is related to fairness and inclusion. Then later, we'll introduce the 4.0 in the BBQ leadership. This is focusing on equity. Then the third bullet, okay, take note of the spelling of FOURces. So FOURces in education. I think you are puzzled by what that means. So I will unlock that later on. And then fourth bullet is on education 4.0. And then the fifth one is on determining equity. So how do we determine equity? And then lastly, we'll talk about evaluating K-12 based on equity. It took me time to really put all of these ideas together in relation so that we'll make it relevant to the BBQ leadership, particularly on 4.0. Okay, so let's begin by having this BBQ leadership 4.0 test. It's crude one, okay? It's very crude. Now take note, there are 4 pictures here. So we have A, B, C, and D. Okay. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'd like you to key in your responses to the chat box, okay? And we'll determine how many are very proactive in this webinar. The first question is, arrange the pictures according to the number of learners. Okay. All right. Come on. So the question is, arrange the pictures according to the number of learners. I'll say it increasing. Okay, so with increasing number of learners. All right, so I hope you were able to key in your answer. The second question here is, which of these pictures can be grouped together as having households that are considered rich, and pictures that depict households that may be considered poor? Okay. Oh, come on. So key in your answer. All right. So before I'll continue asking some more questions, let's first begin with the first a question. So the picture with the most number of learners is letter A, then letter B, then we can tie C and D, okay? Because in letter A there are around, let's say there are 7. Or 6 ba? 6 or 7. Letter B, we have 2, 4, 5. Let's say there are 5. There's a baby there, okay? But will not yet include the baby. And then for letters C and D, 1 each. Okay? We disregard those at the back of the nanay. So did you get the correct answer? Katuwan lang naman ito. Then the second question is to group the pictures according to which you think are rich, maybe poor. So from here we say na A and C are pictures that show they are rich. And then for letters B and D, we say they are poor. Okay, so that's it. Now, the next question here is, among these pictures, which do you think needs help the most? Sige nga, pakilagay dyan. Alin dito sa mga 4 na pictures dito ang nangangailangan ng tulong? Pinaka, yung number 1 na nangangailangan ng tulong. Right? So maybe you answered B. Sana nag-agree tayo na lahat ay nangangailangan ng tulong yung letter, mapamilya ng letter B. And sinusundan ng, yes, okay, picture, letter D. Okay. And of course, siguro the last question that I'm going to ask here is, do you consider this diversity of households in your planning, in the preparation of your ESIP, in the preparation of your annual implementation plan? I hope yes. And if you say yes, then we need to see how you did it in your ESIP, how you did it in your AIP, how you did it in your work and financial plan, how you did it in your basic education learning continuity plan. Because if you were able to capture this in your planning documents, we'll be addressing what we call equity in education, right? So that's why I said it's crude test, because the test is not reliable, it's not valid, but somehow can spark interest, okay, in documenting or gathering data, whether quantitative or qualitative data that may help us in our planning, in our strategic planning. Okay, and take note that in these 4 pictures, I categorized them as multigrade household and monograde household. Here you see that there are 2 pictures, letters C and D. Okay. Monograde, there's only one learner, okay, 1 grade level, and that's the difference, that one is a pure monograde household and a rich monograde household. So nakikita natin dito na ang nangangailangan din ng tulong between the 2 is the poor monograde household. So take note, tingnan ninyo yung bata doon. So maybe nakaka-relate din kayo habang pinag-uusapan natin ito. Moreover, we also have multigrade household. So we have the rich multigrade household and the poor multigrade household. So in the multigrade household, kunwari, there are 6 learners. Okay, one is kinder, another is grade 3, another is grade 6, another is grade 8, another is grade 9. Okay, something like that. So just imagine the challenge if we focus on the poor multigrade household compared to the rich multigrade household. We're not saying that the rich multigrade household does not need support. What we like to highlight is addressing equity, okay, in education. Okay, according to Andreas Schleicher, Director for Education and Skills of the OECD, students from privileged backgrounds, supported by their parents, and eager and able to learn, would find their way past closed school doors to alternative learning opportunities. Of course, nakita natin na yung may mga kaya, nakakabili sila ng laptop, smartphone, okay, meron silang mga gandang TV, ganon, okay, or they have other high technologies. Those from disadvantaged backgrounds often remain shut out when their schools shut down. So alam natin, so as we consider those pictures in the previous slide, this somehow depicts what the Director for Educational Skills from OECD is trying to communicate to us. That's why it matters a lot to talk about equity and quality in education, and that is supporting disadvantaged students and schools. So yes, not only students ang pinag-uusapan natin dito, even schools, okay, that are in far-flung, yung tinatawag natin na mga last mile schools. Siyempre may mga eskwelahan na how do you call that? Maraming naibibigay. Okay. And we recognize all of this. So speaking of equity, okay, from this reference, 10 steps to equity in education. Equity in our schools means that the design of the education system, everything from how or what we teach to how or when we discipline students, practices in and out of school, and how financial resources are allocated, all work together to provide, first, fairness and inclusion. So to be able to appreciate what we mean by equity in our schools, there is this important consideration: being able to differentiate and be able to integrate, okay, in our efforts to provide for equity. And these two words are fairness and inclusion. Fairness and inclusion in schools, fairness and inclusion in community learning centers, fairness and inclusion at the district level, fairness and inclusion at the division level, at the regional level, at the national level. So we need to be able to grasp this. So OECD made important definitions about inclusion and fairness relevant to our discussion on equity. Remember that when we talk about equity, it is also a word that is attached, okay, to the SDG number 4, which is on quality education, okay, quality and equitable education. So let's unlock two words here. It's important that we understand them, because in the course of the discussion, in the sharing, I'll be presenting more ideas to further appreciate what we mean by addressing equity in education. So inclusion, this refers to the objective of ensuring that all students, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds or from traditionally marginalized groups, have access to high quality education and attain a minimum level of skills. So, pag titingnan natin itong salitang inclusion, first, there is what we call access to high quality education. So, pwedeng papasok dito yung tinatawag na gross enrollment rate, net enrollment rate, transition rate, cohort survival rate, completion rate, dropout rate, graduation rate, and even on curriculum exits. Because there's that another part of this definition is attain a minimum level of skills. So pag sinabi nating minimum, that is the minimum that is acceptable. Okay, so and one way to be able to determine this would be the result of the classroom assessment, the national assessment, and even the international large-scale assessment. Kaya napakahalaga din na maintindihan natin ano nga ba ang minimum level of skills. Sa SDG 4 kasi meron siya sinasabi na minimum proficiency level. Ganun din ang ating NAT. There's also a minimum proficiency, there's also proficiency level, but it did not define what it means by a minimum proficiency level. I believe that pag sinabi nating proficient level sa NAT natin, that's the minimum proficiency level. But in the international large-scale assessments, levels ang pinag-uusapan na doon, like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Like in the PISA 2018, level 2 is the minimum proficiency level. But in the SEA PLM, the minimum proficiency level is level 6. That's the minimum proficiency level. In the classroom assessment, for example, by virtue of DepEd Order 8 series of 2015 and the DepEd Order 31 series of 2020, syempre nako-compute tayo ng mga grades doon. But we need to be able to determine which is considered as the minimum level of skills. Is it 75? Kung 75 yon, is it the transmuted? Okay, or the non-transmuted? So there are two pictures that can come in here. When you say transmuted, we will not forget that there is a difference between a raw score and the transmuted grade. Okay, so I'm talking about this in relation to inclusion. So everyone is literate, numerate, and socio-emotional mature, regardless of SES, gender, and cultural preference or background. So that is inclusion. Now, let's talk about fairness. Fairness refers to the goal of fully realizing every student's potential by removing obstacles over which individual students have no control, such as unequal access to educational resources and school environments. Nako, dito sa pandemya talagang we need to reflect. Okay. Naging fair ba? Naging fair ba ang, let's say, sino ba? Naging fair ba ang school? Naging fair ba ang local government? Naging fair ba ang DepEd? Naging fair ba ang government sa pagbibigay, okay, ng mga sa pagtatanggal ng mga, sabihin natin, palakid, okay, sa pagkatuto ng bata beyond their control, beyond their control. Katulad ngayon, di ba? May mga, sabi nga natin sa pictures A, B, C, D, yung may mga bata, walang laptop, okay, walang TV, walang cellphone, may mga ganun eh. Okay? So, it is here where mapapaisip tayo. Fair ba on the part of our learners given this situation? So, in understanding equity, we need to consider the two, okay? Inclusion and fairness. So, almost in every slide sa susunod, ipapasok natin yung usapin ng inclusion and fairness. Kasi sabi ko, gaano man tayo kagaling, for example, sa planning, okay? Kung na-miss out natin na bigyan ng pansin ang equity sa planning natin, maybe there will remain to be challenges, okay, in addressing our points on inclusion and fairness. Okay, so the PISA 2018 presented this framework on equity. And here are three. We have the background characteristics. So socioeconomic status, the immigrant background, and gender. So, well, pag sinabi natin socioeconomic status, partly or fully, we know what it means, okay, in relation to A, B, C, and D. Okay. Pag immigrant background naman, maybe we can factor in here, okay, the diversity of learners. Okay, diversity of learners in terms of their background. Okay, the IP versus the non-IP, for example, okay, or in consideration to the different mother tongues. So pwede nating i-consider yon. And then the third one is on gender. So let's just pangalanan lang natin ito na context. It's letter C. And then the second one is, we call them the mediating factors, the concentration of disadvantage. Ibig sabihin, gaano karami ang mga learners na who are disadvantaged. And then access to educational resources. Siyempre, pag sinabi nating educational resources, meron tayo tinatawag na mga human resources, financial resources, okay, physical resources. Accessible ba sila? Accessible ba ang mga magagaling na teacher para sa kanila? Accessible ba? Ang ibig sabihin din na tama ba, sapat ba yung teachers na nandoon sa kanilang community? Then another one is on the stratification policies. Okay. It may refer, okay, yung nasabi natin, pwede nating i-connect pa rin ito sa socio-economic status. And from here, I just labeled that as inputs with processes. And when we say inputs, we mean the basic education inputs. Siyempre, there are processes that can happen here, right? So let's just label them as letter I and letter P. And the third one is on the outcomes. So access to schooling, average performance, attitudes and beliefs, then expectations for the future. Siguro nakaka-relate kayo pag sinabi nating access to schooling, nandun yung gross enrollment rate, sabi ko nga kanina, yung net enrollment rate, cohort survival, then average performance, okay, it can be classroom level, national level, international level. And then, napakahalaga din na malaman natin yung kanilang attitudes and beliefs. And then what they expect for the future. This framework is based on the PISA. Okay, so we'll label this also as the outputs and outcomes. There are literature that say access to schooling is more of an output, while average performance is more of an outcome. Attitudes and beliefs, let's say these are outcomes, even the expectations for the future. So in relation to fairness and inclusion, we say that fairness is related to the sufficiency of basic education inputs. So yun nasa gitna na black. While inclusion relates to the context and the outputs and outcomes. So we look at the context and the outputs, how they relate with one another. So this is one way also of appreciating equity based on the PISA. So how do we achieve equity, for example, at the school level? It said here, to achieve equity in education, we must develop leaders who can transform our institutions by eliminating inequitable practices and cultivate the unique gifts, talents, and interests of every child. So papasok dito din yung di ba? Yung rights-based education. And then, so that success and failure are no longer predictable by student identity like racial, cultural, economic, or any other social factor. So essentially, it's still talking about fairness and inclusion. So take note of the arrow. So to achieve equity in education, that has to be established because we like, doon nga sa pointing to the arrow is an equity, we have to establish the relationship of two important variables here. The educational outcomes, okay, yun yung outputs and outcomes, and then yung students' personal background. So itong education outcomes, ito yung letter O na dalawa sa previous slide. Then students' personal background naman, yun yung sa nasa context. Okay? So, we need to be able to establish the relationship. And it said here, the weaker the relationship, later on, kunwari, gagawa tayo ng regression analysis ng education outcomes or students' personal background, gagawa tayo ng isang mathematical model, okay, at least to be able to show, okay, if there are significant predictors, okay, of education outcomes. And it said, the weaker the relationship, the more a school system is able to compensate for unfavorable learning environments outside of the school, and thus may be considered to be more equitable. So remember yung inclusion and fairness. So kapag maganda yung fairness, that is basic education inputs, okay, we are hypothesizing na tataas ang education outcomes regardless of the context. Okay? Regardless of babae ka, lalaki ka, mayaman ka, mahirap ka, okay, or isa kang IP or isa kang non-IP. Kailangan mababa yung mga relationships doon. Okay? So that we say that there is equity. Considering too na mga learners natin were able to achieve the minimum proficiency level. Okay? So, sabi dito, to be able to achieve equity in education, mayroong una kalagay dito sa arrow. We must develop leaders. Okay? Who? Yon. And dito na, i-invoke ko na dito yung BBQ Leaders 4.0. So, who is the BBQ Leader 4.0? Okay, so matagal lang advocacy namin ito ni Sir Orly, and we were able to communicate this many times in webinars, in sharings. Just to emphasize that here we are citing as an example our school heads. We all know that school heads, okay, are encountering a good number of programs, activities, and projects that need to be implemented because they are closest to our learners. Okay? However, kung minsan si school head sa dami ng iniisip niya, so parang ganyan, iniisip siya, mayroon siyang AURAS, MEA, meron siyang RPMS, at kung ano-ano pa. So kung nag-jumble-jumble lang ang mga yon, okay, punong-puno yung utak ng ating school head. Pero kung we thread or we try to organize, okay, and one way to organize is through a metaphor, okay, yung barbecue stick, okay, barbecue stick. And that barbecue stick is the school-based management. And we all know that in the school-based management, there are 4 principles. Ba? Leadership and governance, curriculum and learning, accountability and continuous improvement, and the management of resources. So 4 ito. So parang ito yung panusok. Okay? And then yung mga cuts, okay, sorry kung ang ginagamit ko dito ay meat, pero syempre pwede namang yan, pwede namang vegetables, okay, or fruits, pwede din, di ba? So tutusukin mo yan. So yung isang cut, program 1, another cut, program 2, another cut, program 3, another cut, program 4, another cut, program. Tutusukin mo lang yan, then put them side by side para nang sa ganon, our school heads, okay, will become mindful. Kasi magkaiba yung mind is full, punong-puno, kaysa yung mindful, mas focus, diba? Mas organisado, mas systematic. Okay? And we use the SBM principles as our reference. And somehow this can help our schools, okay, especially those who are aspiring to become level 2, level 3 in their SBM levels of practice. So ito yung advocacy namin ni Sir Orly, which started in 2018. So why mindfulness? Okay, so pag titingnan mo kasi ang literature ng mindfulness, it also is synonymous to wellness, well-being, okay, sound mind. Okay. We also consider emotional intelligence. Okay, so mindfulness is the cultivation of focus, clarity, creativity, and compassion in the service of others. In equity, we need mindfulness. Okay, we need to be able to do some disaggregation. Okay, wala namang problema sa disaggregation kasi ang gusto natin nga is we'll be able to differentiate our learners Kasi nga, kung iba-ibang pangangailangan nila, at alam natin yon, mas nabibigyan natin ng tamang attention, tamang intervention. Okay? So, yan. So, mindfulness is almost related to the emotional intelligence. Okay? So, the barbecue leader is, of course, a mindful champion. Okay? And an emotionally intelligent champion for developing quality kids. So this is the K-12 conceptual framework. I need not elaborate this because I'm sure that you are all aware of this. Pero yung BBQ kasi, yung BBQ, we have a meaning for that because we tread, okay, we tread for quality. But the BBQ, okay, although sinasabi natin na barbecue leadership, okay, BBQ is actually an abbreviation also for, okay, being and becoming. Okay, being and becoming in developing quality kids. So that's the BBQ. And because you are a leader who would love to look at the BBQ here, being and becoming in developing quality kids, then we become the barbecue leaders. Okay. So being and becoming through quality leadership. So that amid the pandemic, differentiated instruction is at its finest. Bakit? Bakit at its finest? Kasi nga, yung mga learners natin, they are in their respective homes. Okay? So mas nakita natin yung family A, household B, household C, household D. Okay? Monograde household, multigrade household. And being learner-centered, Barbecue Leaders 4.0 must have mapped and profiled all their learners. So meron akong in-introduce dito na bagong. All, advanced, least, lost, and last. Across household in terms of their socioeconomic status, gender, sociocultural affiliation, disabilities, and others. So ito yung nasa previous slides kanina. Then we apply the DEI principles on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So here we remember that inclusion and fairness would define what we mean by equity. So you see, lagi kong inuulit-ulit yung inclusion and fairness. So please let us not forget how we define inclusion and fairness. Okay, so fairness is mga resources para sa mga learners, okay, that have to be provided kasi they cannot, by virtue of their situation, okay, they have no control over all of this. So we provide. So these are the basic education inputs. That's the letter I. Samantalang kapag context, okay, yun na context and then the outcomes, doon kino-connect natin yung usapin ng inclusion. Now, why 4.0 in Barbecue Leader 4.0? Yan, Barbecue leaders have a mindful sense of the collective forces influencing education. Ang dami kasi nating ang dami nating mga natututunan in the process to become a better leader. Okay? Whether transactional, but more importantly, transformational. Okay? Whether adaptive leadership, whether resilient leadership, whether servant leadership, whether spiritual leadership, all of this. But these are collective forces influencing education so that we become better barbecue leaders. Okay? And here they are. Una, yun. So the 21st century skills, there are 4. Learning and innovation skills, information, media, and technology skills, life and career skills, effective communication skills. 4 yun. Then we have this SDG 4. Okay, so there are 17 SDGs, and the 4th one is SDG 4, which is quality education. In the ISO, okay, we have the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Apat din yun. Sa Industry 4.0, kaya pinag-uusapan naman natin dito is disruptive and sustaining technologies. Okay, artificial intelligences, advanced robotics, virtual realities, machine learning. Yung mga ganito na usapin. That's Industry 4.0. Another one is the VUCA. Okay? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We all know those. So apat din yun. Diba? Although recently there's this introduction of letter D, which is para daw maging VUCAD. So that is the disruptive. Okay? But in literature, is the VUCA. There are four. There are four of them. Right? Now, let's move on somewhere below. Okay? There are four core values. Maka-Diyos, makatao, makakalikasan, at makabansa. And then, in the sulong edukalidad, there are four. Okay? We have KITE, K-I-T-E. Okay? K-12 curriculum implementation and review and update. I is the improvement of the learning environment. T is for the teachers upskilling and reskilling, and E for the engagement of stakeholders for collaboration and partnership. Another one is the prime HRM. There are four HR systems or core areas. Okay, we have the recruitment, selection, placement, and induction. We have performance management, with learning and development, and with the rewards and recognition. And of course, the SBM. There are four principles. So we have the leadership and governance. Okay. We have curriculum and learning, accountability, continuous improvement. And the fourth one is the management of resources. Four, okay? FOURces, okay? And lastly, of course, there are four curriculum exits. So meaning all of these FOURces collectively, okay, influence, okay, on how we look at the learners at the center, being and becoming a whole person, being and becoming, okay, quality kids. That's the BBQ, being and becoming quality kids. And they need barbecue leaders, okay, being and becoming, okay, for quality leadership. And these are the collective FOURces. So not force, but collective FOURces that influence the barbecue leaders. And sana we can put all of this together to address equity. And addressing equity means, okay, being able to help out both the rich households and, let's say, sorry for the bias, but also giving premium, helping the very poor households, most especially the multi-grade households. Okay, so having shared this barbecue leadership 4.0 or barbecue leader 4.0, it also implies, okay, that we are implementing the education 4.0. Okay, and implementing the education 4.0 means being able to adapt to the situations. Considering the pandemic, we were able to craft our basic education learning continuity plan. And in reviewing our BELCP at the school level in relation to our ESIP and our annual implementation plan, sana makita na natin, ma-factor in na natin doon sa mga plano na yon ang usapin ng equity. So inclusion and fairness. Sana mahimay natin, yung part na to is for inclusion, yung part na to ay sa fairness. Like for example here, so this is the BBQ Leadership Framework. Okay, amid the pandemic na ito. Okay? Kasi dito sa BBQ Leadership Framework na ito, amid the pandemic, nakapasok na dito ang PPST, PPSSH, and the PPSSS. So, nakalagom na silang lahat dito. Kunwari sa KRA1, leadership and governance. Siyempre, usapin ng usapin ng learning and development, nandun din. Okay? Paano i-manage, patakbuhin ang paaralan. Nandito yung tinatawag natin na paggawa, pagrebisa ng ESIP, okay? In harmony with the BELCP of the school. Sana dito pa lang kitang-kita na yung inclusion and fairness. Sana ma-factor in dito. Sa KRA2, curriculum and learning, sa sa pagtuturo, okay? Sa KRA1, PPSH Domain 1, leading strategically, and number 4, developing self and others. Sa KRA2 naman, PPSSH Domain number 3, focusing on teaching and learning. So mga resources yan, okay? Kailangan natin mga learning resources. So dito pumapasok na yung usapin ng fairness. Okay? So usapin ng fairness. Kasi if we address fairness and inclusion, then yun ang essence ng equity. Di po ba? Okay? And then sa KRA3, accountability and continuous improvement, later on we compute, di ba? Sinasabi kasi natin na we do regression analysis, we do some statistics. Kasi importante din, mag-statistics din tayo aside from the qualitative data para makita natin yung relationship, okay? Or if there are significant predictors of educational outcomes. So pag makita natin na mababa yung relationship pero matataas yung mga proficiency levels, mukhang nagiging successful tayo sa equity. And then of course, KRA4 is still in relation to fairness, that's the management of our resources. So you see, napaka-importante na i-juxtapose natin ang mga ito. Kasi mas madaling mag-analyze, mas madaling mag-plano, mas maayos ang mag-implement at maayos din mag-MNE. Okay? And then from there, lalabas ulit yung panibagong next 3 years, for example, of the ESIP based on the LCP. Okay? So let's focus a bit, okay, on curriculum and learning, but still in the parlance of equity, okay, fairness and inclusion. So dito pinapasok natin yung nag-introduce ako ng isang acronym ulit na model, okay, modular and online distance education and learning. Okay? So we understand na lahat ng mga bata ay mayroong modules. But we understand also na may mga bata na may mga modules na mayroong mga kaya sa buhay. So they can buy laptops, cellphone, ganon. Pero may mga bata naman talaga na walang-wala. Kaya modules yung hawak nila. So dito pa lang sa curriculum and learning, mukhang may pagka-unfair na in terms of resources. So paano ang gagawin? Siyempre sabihin natin, kulang ng pera. Ano. So we really have to make both ends meet by prioritizing. Mag-prioritize tayo. Okay? So first priority, second priority, third priority. Between the needs of learners, for example, na sa pagkatuto nila. And kunwari, iniisip nyo, mukhang nagfe-faint na yung pintor sa loob ng classroom o mukhang nagpe-paint na ang pintor sa mga gates. Okay. So ano ba ang uunahin nyo doon? Okay? Yung paano makapag-provide ng resources sa bata habang nag-aaral, or magpipintor muna kahit limited face-to-face at naka-pilot implementation pa lang tayo. Pag-isipan ng mga yon. I mean, it takes a lot of stakeholders engagement to be able to discern all of this as well. Kasi nga, fairness ang pinag-uusapan natin dito. Kasi kung walang fairness, how would you expect na maganda yung kakalabasan ng inclusion? Okay? And if kung nagbabanggaan ang inclusion and fairness, do you think we'll be able to achieve equity? So these are things that we need to consider. Okay? So ito yung bahay K-12. So we have the CIA, curriculum, instruction and assessment, okay? And the core values, the vision and mission, and we have the ladder. Okay? Ano lang ito? It's one way of explaining what we mean by the K-12. Okay? But of course, amid the pandemic, meron tayong mga most essential learning competencies. Then we need to assess. Okay, so there are many ways to assess. I understand that there are already policies in place, like for example, the academic ease policy. Sana na consider natin kasi yung academic ease policy nabibigyan ng flexibility lahat kung paano ang gagawin sa pagtuturo. Even the suggested distance learning delivery modalities, that is the OUCI memo on weekly home learning plan. But if you're going to look at the self-learning module, okay, di ba? Ano na yun? Parang nandun na yung lesson plan, di ba? So, lagyan na lang ng time, okay? And then himayin na lang, mag-integrate na lang. Okay? So sometimes easier said than done, but for me, okay, lagi kong sinasabi na if at home mother knows best, okay, in school, for me teachers know best. Okay? So if there are policies and we see the policies as need to be contextualized, localized, then do so. Okay, do so. Okay. So yon, and we are doing this out of love. Yan. And syempre, okay, sa buong mundo, hindi lang naman Pilipinas yung nakakaranas. Hindi lang naman tayo sa school nakakaranas. So practically lahat. Okay. May mga local governments na very supportive. Okay. Kasi nga, syempre, depende din sa kung gaano kayaman ang isang munisipyo o syudad o probinsya. But worldwide, lahat naman nakakaranas. Kaya nga sabi, a number of countries have taken steps to assess learning losses and address learning gaps. Ayan. Okay? Learning losses could be due to, is due to the outbreak of the pandemic. And we know that the effect is na-widen, okay, yung gap. Okay, because nawala yung mga bata sa physical setup ng school. So we believe na there are learning losses, okay? And ang daming issues about fairness, ang daming issues about inclusion. Kaya may mga ganito na pag-aaral like standardized assessments to track learning losses, questionnaire to teachers, principals, school providers, adjusted content of examinations. So parang ito din yung ating basic education learning continuity implementation. Of course, BELCP is a plan. We need to implement the plan. We need to monitor and evaluate the plan so that we'll be able to adjust and be ready for another round of implementation. Okay? So, this time, the challenge is how to determine the equity in the school, the district, or the SDO. Okay, syempre, mag-uumpisa yung ating efforts, interventions sa school. given na meron na tayong napakagandang plano in relation to equity. Okay, but we can go through another process, okay, by considering the situation, pictures A, B, C, D, okay, and then we take a look at this framework. I was able to show this in one of the webinars that I gave, and I look at this framework as a possible guide also, okay, in determining equity. So parang there's a letter T here, this is the T framework. Somewhere to the left is the BBQ Leadership. Yan. Okay. So ano yan? Mabigat yan. Sorry for the mabigat na term, but inspiring. Mindfulness. Okay. So emotional intelligence, nandyan din. And nandyan yung sulong edukalidad. So pag ano yun, pag maayos yan, then we go to the organizational performance. But take note that we have to look at equity here. So note that there are outputs and outcomes. Okay. On the learner's side, access, retention, completion, achievement. That's the ARCA. Okay. So pag access, that's the GER and NER. Pag retention, that's the CSR and transition rate. Pag completion, that's the completion rate and graduation rate. Then achievement, yan. So reading, math, science, etc. Pero kailangan ma-disaggregate natin ito so that we can determine inclusion. So pag sinabi kasi nating inclusion, di ba? Access to quality education, na-achieve nila yung minimum proficiency level regardless of whether they are male or female, okay, they are coming from poor or rich family, or they are coming from IP or non-IP communities. Parang ganon. Okay? That's inclusion. Fairness is na-provide ba yung mga pangangailangan ng mga bata beyond their control. Okay? Beyond their control. Kasi for example, kung may panganak sila na mahirap, hindi naman nila kontrolado yun. Diba? Okay? So, of course, on the human resource sides, so meron din tayong mga outputs and the outcomes doon, like obligation rate, disbursement rate, and so on. Okay? So, step 1. Yan. Kasi gusto natin i-determine natin. So, ang school ba natin is a school that is achieving equity? So, here is a simple process. May not be perfect, okay, but pwede nating pag-usapan. So step 1 is systematically, okay, profile our households. Okay, so we need this for the ESIP or even in the annual implementation plan. So profiling for equity. So yung household A, household B, household C, household D. Okay, so I hope that pag sinabi nating ABCD, you can still remember na ito ay referring to the monograde household, the multigrade household, the rich household, and the poor household. So i-profile natin sila. Mga bata, yan. Yung batang ito, ganitong sitwasyon nila. Yan. So ilagay natin. There must be a way to be able to document all of this. Essentially, this is data gathering on the context. Okay? Of the learners. That's the letter C. Okay, kanina sa diagram natin. Okay? That's the step 1. Ang step 2 natin is determine the learning delivery modalities na ginagamit sa household. Okay? So kasi this can also help us, okay, differentiate, okay, again, inclusion and fairness. Okay, siyempre pag very poor households, whether multigrade or monograde, malamang purely modular. Yan, purely modular. Pag households naman na rich, multigrade or monograde, malamang they have the needed technologies, they have the needed support. So kailangan natin na meron tayo, no. So we need to disaggregate. Okay? So hindi pwedeng frequency count lang, kundi talagang hihimayin na ganito. Okay? So this child belongs to this child belongs to that. Sila ay ganito, ganito yung sitwasyon nila. So isa-isahin natin. Okay? Kasi we need to do that because of our efforts on differentiation. And then step 3, okay? So then later on, we compute, we determine, okay? We determine the GER, the NER, the CSR, the DR, okay, according to gender. Then we determine the reading literacy, math literacy, scientific literacy sa classroom assessment. Then we also disaggregate them according to socio-cultural background. So, and then again, na disaggregate sila in terms of poor versus rich households, monograde versus multigrade households. Okay? So kung gusto talaga natin addressan yung equity, sana possible na ganito yung pwedeng mangyari o gagawin. Right? And step 4 is we can do regression analysis by relating these variables arc. So ano lang, nilabel ko lang yan in the previous slide. Note na pag-usapin na ng impact sa curriculum exits ang mga yan. So kasi after senior high school graduation, pwede natin silang i-trace na saan na sila after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years. Okay? Pag ginawa kasi natin yon is an effort to determine the impact of what we are doing as a school. Okay? So it said here, if correlation coefficient is significantly low, then very likely equity is achieved. Kasi ang ibig sabihin nun, maganda ang performance ng mga bata whether rich or poor. Okay? Tapos, dahil siguro na-provide lahat ang mga pangailangan nila. There's fairness. There's fairness, there's inclusion, and therefore there's equity. So if correlation coefficient is significantly high, okay, so mataas ang performance ng mayayaman, something like that. Mababa ang performance ng mahihirap. So there is inequity. And we need to improve our efforts for equity in our school. So ganun yun gagawin natin. Okay? As a school. So kailangan din talaga ang ating mga school heads are inspired, okay, to do some data collection and analysis kasi the cycle of planning, implementing, monitoring, and evaluation, and then adjusting. Essentially, that's plan, do, check, act. Okay? This is the PDCA process for continual improvement. Okay? Now, let's just take a look at the proficiency levels in reading literacy sa PISA grades 9 and 10. Okay? So, take a look at region 2. In terms of inclusion, usapin dito ng minimum proficiency level pag inclusion, minimum proficiency level. Ang sinasabi dito sa table na ito is focus on level 2. Okay? Ang sabi kasi ng PISA, ang level 2 is the minimum proficiency level. Okay? So let's take a look at region 2. This is region 2 as a whole. So we add levels 2 and 3, 13.74 plus 3.32, that's 16, 17, 06, 17%. 17% of our grade 9 learners ay nasa minimum proficiency level 2. Okay? So, yun yung meron tayo. So, para aspeto ito ng inclusion kasi quality education ang pinag-uusapan. Okay? So, in terms of quality, medyo we still need to exert more by bringing in the 1A. Yung mga bata na nasa 1A, 28% in region 2 na grade 9, mag-effort pa tayo at dalhin natin sila sa level 2. Okay? So, kaya ang mga school heads natin, kailangan maging strategic sila. Kasi if this values, 17%, kunwari, sabihin na lang natin, eskwelahan mo ito, eskwelahan ko ito. So sa eskwelahan ko, parang sinasabi nito is, on the average, only 17% of my grade 9, okay, have achieved at least the minimum proficiency level. So mapapaisip ka, so ano kaya ang gagawin? Ano pang pwedeng gawin? Ganun. So provide more interventions. So that's for reading. Okay, grade 9 ito ha. Then subgrade sa ano naman, sa mathematics, level 2, 16.66, 4.34.03, then that is 21, something like that, 21% pag mathematics. Okay? So mapapaisip ka, then that's part of the inclusion. Okay? And then for science, 1288, 5 tapos 0.6. So that is 17, 18.5%. Okay? Ang at least minimum proficiency level. So these persons having achieved the at least minimum proficiency level, parang 20%. So 1 in every 5 grade 9 ay nakakarating sa minimum proficiency level. So what happened to the 4? Ngayon mapapaisip ka in terms of fairness sa mga resources. Ngayon mapapaisip ka in terms of giving quality instruction. Mapapaisip ka in giving quality supervision of instruction. Okay? So all of this, although these are pre-pandemic data, okay, siguro how much more ngayon at pandemya tayo. Okay? So we need to be very strategic. Okay? Kasi bago ka makapag-strategic planning, strategic thinking muna tayo. Di ba? Systems thinking or systemic thinking pwede din. Okay? Ganun yung mga exercises sana natin. Now, in terms of PISA sa grades 9 and 10, ang World Bank study, meron siyang regression analysis. Okay? Yung R-squared nito ay 39%. Ibig sabihin, all predictors, okay, can account 39% in explaining the reading performance. So there are student factors, okay, that affect performance, gender, SES. So ito 'yun. Ito yung nasa inclusion na variables, di ba? And then idagdag na natin dito, parents' emotional support, school readiness, okay, early childhood education, frequency of student absenteeism. Okay, so napakagandang tingnan natin lahat ito. So the higher, the better. Yun ang sinasabi dito. Okay? Sa school factors din, okay, students' exposure to bullying. Alam nyo ba na sa PISA, ang report ng mga kabataang grade 9, they are bullied, okay, 4 times higher than the OECD average. So kailangan pag-isipan natin na ito. Gaano ba talaga ka-safe ang ating mga paaralan? So these are results of the PISA 2018. So sense of belonging to school, tapos yung location ng school, kung rural versus urban versus rural, nakaka-apekto din 'yon sa performance nila sa PISA. Teacher factors din, yung classroom disciplinary climate like quality of instruction, teacher feedback, student engagement, teacher enthusiasm. So pag mataas daw 'yon, mataas din ang performance. So this can give explanations if our school is really providing for equity. Okay? So, nakita natin na mukhang mababa pa rin yung ating percent of learners with the minimum proficiency level. So probably we say na yung inclusion, we say na mababa, Yung fairness, siguro more resources will have to be provided. At mag-isip tayo ng mga interventions. Okay? Baka makakatulong. Okay? Let me just share one possible intervention na pwedeng gawin or marahil ginagawa na. Although itong pinapakita ko sa inyo, this is an outreach project that I have initiated for some schools sa SDO Nueva Vizcaya. So we called it USB and radyo para sa Oplan Karunungan, or in short, you are okay. Okay? So parang ganito yung framework ng framework na ito. Okay? Ng outreach project na you are okay. Ang gusto nating addressan dito ay inclusion and fairness. Okay? Ang ginawa, we were able to determine 39 very poor multigrade households, and in each household, average of 3 to 4 learners. Okay? In each household, nagbigay tayo ng radyo, okay, at may mga USB. May mga USB. Okay. So yung USB, ang ginawa namin ay lahat ng mga audio lessons, okay, hinimay-himay namin kinder hanggang grade 12. Then for the first quarter, lahat ng mga subjects nilagay namin sa USB. Tapos binigay sa mga household na mayroong 3 to 4 learners. So parang multigrade yon na very poor household. Okay. Tapos yan, so yung tinamin niyo yung isang family dito na pinakita ko kanina. This is the household letter B nga ba? Household letter B. Ito yon. So nabigyan ng isa. Okay. Although hindi na provide dito, but I'm sure that they have the learning modules. So ang sinasabi lang natin dito is sana sa pagbibigay ng modules, samahan na rin ng mga buto, samahan na rin ng mga dispersal, ganon, and then radyo na may USB. Okay, di ba? Para lalong mag-effort tayo to improve equity. Yun naman ang gusto natin na mangyari. Kasi we are not only happy for rich learners to achieve higher. We are also equally happy when we see poor learners from poor households to be achieving, okay, not necessarily equal, but at least ma-meet nila yung minimum proficiency level. Okay, so for me this is just one intervention. I am sure that you have all. So nasa process din kami of doing monitoring and evaluation dito sa project na ito, and we hope that at the end of the first quarter or second quarter, makikita din namin kahit paano kung ano yung impact ng project na ito. Okay? So going back, medyo patapos na ako, pasensya na, at medyo na-enjoy ko yung mag-share sa inyo. So alam na natin ito, naipakita ko na ito, but ang gusto ko lang na i-focus dito is the CIPOO. CIPOO and related to fairness and inclusion. Okay? This is now an evaluation of the K-12 program in a certain school, okay, using the concept of CIPOO in relation to fairness and inclusion. Sa mga gumagawa ng school report card, pwede nating i-consider din ito. So this diagram, okay, tingnan ninyo, may mga arrows yan, and context, that's the C, inputs, process, outputs, and outcomes. So ito yung usapin ng inclusion and fairness. So pag kinonect natin yan, tapos we can determine the relevance. Okay? The relevance is simply connecting the needs based on context and the K-12 program objectives. For me, I see the relevance of the K-12. Ngayon, pag-usapin naman ng efficiency, i-compare natin yung fairness at saka sa resulta ng kanilang classroom assessment or national assessment. and then obtain the efficiency. Okay, this is relevant yung paggasta ng pera sa MOOE, basta anything about money. Pag effectiveness naman, when you look at the objectives, okay, in relation to the outcomes, okay, in relation to the outcomes and the impact. So we can obtain the effectiveness. Then pag sinabi naman nating coherence, we are concerned here on processes and the outputs. Okay. Tingnan lang natin kung baka may mga overlap of mga processes. Okay. Kasi kung minsan sila yung nagiging cause ng mga disruption sa eskwelahan. So maybe we can streamline some processes because probably they are affecting some outputs. And then impact. Ang important measure natin ng impact ay sa curriculum exits. Nasaan yung mga senior high school natin after their graduation. So for elementary schools, you can always determine your impact based on the success of your graduates after na matapos sila ng senior high school. Ganun din sa grade 10. Okay? Ang impact is you look at them after they have graduated from senior high school. That's impact. Then sustainability is kapag nag-i-improve yung equity ninyo, pag nag-i-improve ang impact, then we say na sustainable ang ating mga ginagawa. Okay? So essentially, this is how BBQ Leadership 4.0 okay, must address the situation in school because of course this has a direct effect also on what the districts are monitoring and evaluating. Ganun din sa SDO, ganun din sa RO, ganun din sa national level. Okay? And therefore, in recovering learning losses, kung mababa pa yung inclusion and fairness, mababa pa yung kailangan gagawa pa ng paraan for equity, then these are just some suggestions, okay, from the OECD on how else we can promote effective and equitable education. So principles for schooling during the pandemic and the principles for recovery towards effective and equitable education. Somehow, these 10 okay, are relevant to what we were saying in the previous discussion. So parang summary na lang ito. Keep schools open as much and as safely as possible. Ensure equity and align resources with needs. Provide a remote learning infrastructure which is designed to reach all students. Support teachers in their professional lives. Enable teachers and parents to support learners. Ito naman sa principles for recovery towards effective and equitable education. 6. Provide targeted support to meet students' learning and social and emotional needs. Co-design a robust digital learning infrastructure with teachers and stakeholders. Empower teachers to exercise their professionalism and benefit from professional learning opportunities. Encourage a collaborative culture of innovation. Learn from local, national, and international evidence. Okay, so the BBQ Leader 4.0 okay, has an important role in raising quality by improving equity. And improving equity means enhancing inclusion and fairness. So, pasensya at medyo natagalan ako ng konti, but essentially, yun po yung gusto ko pong mensahe na iparating sa ating lahat. Ang daming mga bata na nangangailangan talaga ng tulong. Okay, lalong-lalo na yung mga pamilya na wala talaga. So sana mabuhusan pa natin sila ng mga resources, okay, para ma-addressan natin yung inclusion at ma-addressan natin ang equity in education. So magbayanihan tayo. Ako po si Samuel Soliven. So live and love. Maraming salamat po sa sa inyong lahat.